He watched a man vaporize before the man even knew he'd been marked. One click. The drone released its payload and reduced the target to red mist on concrete. Lucian Crane kept his eyes on the monitor. Confirmed kill. High value. No deviation, no sound. Just the silent twitch of digital flame in thermal vision. He leaned back in his chair, wiped a fingertip across the control pad, and checked the next coordinate in the queue. There were 5 more targets flagged, all blinking, all marked priority. He selected the next one. Crosshairs locked. Infrared profile matched. Authorization window opened. He clicked. Another explosion. Another smear across another rooftop. He didn't know what city this was. He didn't need to. The only thing that mattered was clarity of image, authorization code, execution. Around him, a room of operators did the same thing, one after another, illuminated by green screens and blue veins. No one spoke. There were no names, just signals, just orders. He tapped the side of the console to dismiss a flashing notification. Static flickered across the interface, but he ignored it. Probably a power relay issue. The concrete walls around him were humming. Everything in this place was humming. Air vents, chairs, fingers, orders. After the 5th strike, he stood up, removed his gloves, and walked down the corridor to the food unit. The hallway was narrow, featureless. Surveillance nodes blinked in the corners. A man passed by with a datapad and a protein bag. Lucian didn't look at him. He didn't care. Nothing mattered. He was efficient. That was enough. Inside the mess room, the lights were too bright, and the food had no taste. He sat, chewed, stood, and returned. When he sat back at his station, the interface was blank. No map, no queue, just a black screen. A single drop of blood dripped from his nose onto his wrist. He stared at it, still warm, still real. The screen flickered again. Then white text appeared, center screen, burning brighter than the drone footage ever did. It said, "You've killed again and again without feeling. Now your blood will carry what your soul denied." The lights in the room snapped off. The chair beneath him vanished. The floor disappeared. He didn't fall. He was pulled, yanked sideways through something that didn't feel like air. It twisted, split, and swallowed him. His vision fractured into red veins and darkness until sound broke through. Metal, stone, screams, heat, a sky like rusted bone above him. He opened his eyes on a battlefield that was still bleeding. Naraka had no maps, no orders, no distance from death, only closeness. He was no longer above it. He was in it. Lucian woke choking on dust, throat dry, chest crushed beneath weight. His ears rang. His body pulsed with heat and confusion. He pushed upward and broke through a thin layer of cracked soil, gasping as firelight painted his skin. Screams pierced the air. Around him, chaos surged in waves, creatures clashing with axes, bone-carved armor, and burning standards hoisted on poles of living wood. 2 figures ran past him, one dragging a blade still dripping. Lucian staggered upright. His uniform was gone. Only loose black cloth clung to him now, scorched and torn. His boots were soaked in something sticky. Blood, someone else's. Something sharp whistled toward his head, and he ducked instinctively. A blade scraped his cheek. He turned and saw a humanoid figure with hollow eyes and skin carved like ritual stone, hissing in a language that stabbed his skull. The creature lunged again. Lucian grabbed a chunk of broken rock and slammed it into the side of its head. Once, twice, the skull cracked. Blood splashed across his forearms. The creature collapsed. Another rushed at him. He drove the stone into its neck before it could swing. Heat, real heat, coated his hands. The blood smelled like smoke and metal. His pulse throbbed against the mess on his palms. He stared at them, disoriented. They were his hands. They were shaking. The weight of the kills didn't sit on a monitor this time. It sat in his spine, in his breathing. Something behind him roared. He turned, ready to fight again, but a rope net slammed into his chest and knocked him backward. Dozens swarmed. His arms were bound. His mouth was stuffed with ashcloth. The creatures, more organized than they looked, began speaking in guttural cadence. One slapped a crimson mark across his chest with a dripping brush. The others nodded. A figure in golden bone armor approached and looked down at him. It spoke in broken words, old words. No memory, no mark, but he kills like one of us. Take him. Lucian was dragged through the battlefield, across cracked tiles that steamed with spilled blood, past broken siege beasts and tents sewn from flesh. His eyes stayed on the bodies. Not the number, the closeness. He'd never been this close to death, never worn its warmth. At the edge of a canyon, the city emerged, Kathir, carved into the side of a cliff, alive with movement, chance, flame, and violence. From the moment he saw it, Lucian knew he was nowhere that Earth remembered. Naraka breathed through stone, and it had swallowed him whole. The crowd gathered in a sunken amphitheater carved from red stone, their bodies painted with ash and bone, their voices silent, their eyes hollow with expectation. Lucian was dragged to the center by two guards with exposed jaws and armor made of stitched muscle plates. His hands were bound behind him, knees forced to the ground. The sand beneath him was already stained with blood, thick and dark, and still wet. Before him stood a warrior, twice his size, chest bare, arms coated in ritual scars, holding a blade shaped like a broken jawbone. The executioner didn't speak. He didn't need to. The crowd had seen this 100 times. No one came back from the pit. The warrior stepped forward. Lucian's bindings were cut. He stood, confused, still aching from the net wounds and the drag across the canyon floor. The warrior charged. Lucian dodged the first swing, but the second grazed his shoulder and ripped fabric and skin. Blood dripped. Panic surged through him. He reached for anything, rock, memory, instinct. Instead, something shifted inside him. His left arm burned. Not heat, pressure. Under his skin, something moved. As the warrior lunged again, Lucian raised his arm to block. The blood on his forearm boiled outward, twisted into a blade that extended from his wrist like it had always been part of him. He didn't think. He slashed. The blade cut clean across the warrior's chest. The man stumbled, screamed, and reached for Lucian, but as he did, veins of glowing red erupted across his torso. Threads of blood, like living veins, shot from Lucian's blade and burrowed into the man's chest. The crowd gasped as one. The warrior froze mid-motion. His eyes turned red, then black. He dropped his weapon. His mouth opened, but no words came, only blood. It poured from his eyes, ears, and nose. His body convulsed once, twice, and collapsed. Dead, Lucian staggered back, the blade retracting into his skin like a breath reversing. His chest rose and fell rapidly. His hands trembled. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. One of the painted elders approached from the side of the arena, leaned close, and spoke with a rasp that cut through the air like iron dragging over bone. "You are not one of us, but you kill like one." The crowd remained still. Then slowly, the elder raised his hand and curled 2 fingers inward. A dozen voices shouted in unison. A word Lucian didn't understand, but recognized his approval. The elder nodded once. Champion. They would not execute him. They would make him fight again. Kathir spread across the cliffs like a wound that never closed, its towers jagged and leaning, its bridges suspended by bone cables, its streets choked with banners torn by wind and ash. Fires burned day and night, not for warmth, but to mark territory. The city was alive, pulsing, layered in chants and war cries. its factions divided by color, sound, and scars. The Despertos of Ossus painted their torsos with white powder and spoke only through gestures in battle. The Sentinels of Varn wore teeth strung around their necks and tattooed every victory into their thighs. Others followed symbols Lucian didn't recognize, each one convinced their path was the only one. But none of them knew why the fighting had started or when it was supposed to end. He asked one of the Despertos in broken words, "Why?" And the man simply tapped his temple, and then his heart, and then walked away. In Kathir, no one questioned. They obeyed rhythms older than memory. Lucian was assigned to the Ossus faction, not out of belief, but because his blood blade matched their methods. They gave him space in a stone alcove, a shard of armor for his chest, and a dagger not for killing others, but for wounding himself. He learned quickly that only by slicing into his own flesh could he summon the weapon again. Each time, the blade formed faster, longer, hungrier, and with every successful cut, the connection he made with his enemy grew deeper. During a training bout, he slashed the side of his rib and lunged at a target. The blade extended like a second limb, pierced the warrior's side, and in that instant, Lucian saw a flash, an image not his own. A face twisted in sorrow. A cave, a child made of stone. Then it was gone. He gasped, stumbled, and tore the blade free. The Despertos watching nodded silently. One of them carved a line into his own shoulder in respect. But Lucian didn't care about visions or meanings. He wasn't here to understand Naraka. He wasn't here to join anything. He only wanted to survive. Each night he sealed his wounds with fire and cloth. Each day he sharpened his reflexes, tested new ways to channel the blood. The blade obeyed him. But what it showed him, the memories of those he touched, he tried to forget. He was here, alive. That was enough. The market of Kathir had been reduced to smoldering debris when Lucian arrived with the patrol. Broken stalls leaked fruit and bone into the streets. Smoke painted the sky in spirals. The Despertos around him advanced cautiously, weapons drawn, sensing something was wrong. Lucian felt it too. The silence wasn't natural, too thick, too full of pressure. They found her standing atop a shattered platform of prayer stones, her body wrapped in strips of dried blood like paper soaked in rust. The cloth moved without wind. Her head tilted slightly, arms extended not in threat, but in invitation. She wore no armor, no weapon, just hundreds of sigils carved into her skin, some still open and glistening. One of the Despertos whispered a name and backed away. Lucian stepped forward. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She spoke before he could move. Her voice was sharp and wet, like something had been bleeding behind her teeth for too long. A hollow soldier with a dripping edge. Her fingers reached out and touched his chest, right above the latest scar he had opened to summon the blade. Pain flashed, not from her touch, but from what followed. Memories hit him in waves, not his, not hers. Something deeper, a house from above, a slow-moving figure, a shape that stopped walking just before it vanished in flame. The smell of hot metal, a chair, a boy. The instant Lucian saw the boy's face, his knees gave. He slashed her throat on instinct, fast and hard, the blood blade bursting from his wrist like it had been waiting. Her body collapsed, gurgling, twitching, eyes locked on him. She was dead before she hit the ground, but she was still laughing. Her mouth moved in death, muttering fragments of prophecy through blood and spit. Lucian tried to back away, but the blood from her throat didn't fall to the ground. It rose. Tendrils of it reached toward him, thin and shimmering, pulling into his chest. His body seized. He dropped to both knees and screamed. The visions returned with greater weight. Not frames, not flashes, feelings, dread, emptiness, a lifetime of orders, a life without pulse. The chair, the screen. The boy. He clutched his face, fingers digging into his own skin. He couldn't stop seeing it. The moment before the click. The pause he never took. His breath came ragged. His heart thundered. Around him, the desperados said nothing. They watched. One placed a hand on Lucian's shoulder and did not pull him up. He had won the fight, but something inside him had broken. Not a bone, not a thought. Something else. Something leaking now, slowly, like a wound that had never been treated. He had killed her, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like something had crawled into him and stayed. The patrol moved through the outer rim of Kathire, where the city's skin broke into sharp rock and dead trees split by lightning. Fires smoldered inside shattered huts, and blood had dried black on the cracked tiles. Lucian walked behind the front line, his blade dormant beneath his skin, still sore from the last pull. They searched for remnants of the enemy faction that had attacked before dawn. Every shadow held threat. Every noise could be teeth. He was growing used to it. Then he saw movement behind a collapsed altar, something small, not a soldier, not a trap. He slowed and stepped off the path. Behind the broken stones, curled into herself and trembling, was a young creature, humanoid but thin, with mirrored eyes and gashes across both legs. Her breathing was ragged. She clutched a shard of glass but couldn't lift it. She was no threat. She was dying. Lucian hesitated. The others moved on. This wasn't part of the mission. He could leave. He should. His orders were to sweep and return. No deviations. No wait. He turned to walk away, then stopped. Something behind his ribs pulled tight. He looked down at his chest. The scar from the Vedenti pulsed. It burned, not from damage, but from something deeper. He turned back, moved toward her. When she saw him, she hissed and tried to crawl away. He knelt, hands open. She didn't understand. Maybe she didn't care. He reached out slowly, but before he could help her stand, another figure burst from the wreckage, claws raised, eyes burning with oil and bone. Lucian twisted, summoned the blade mid-spin, and drove it into the attacker's gut. Blood sprayed across his face. The creature screamed and twisted, but he didn't stop until the body dropped. When he turned back to the girl, she was already on her feet, limping away, leaving a trail of blood. She stopped once, looked at him, and spat in his direction, then vanished into the ruins. Lucian stood motionless. He hadn't expected gratitude. He hadn't even expected survival. But something about the moment cracked something deeper than bone. Behind him, one of the patrol warriors approached slowly, sword still drawn. You bleed for those who would never bleed for you. Lucian didn't answer. He looked down at the smear of blood drying on his chest and watched the scar their pulse again, slower this time, but deeper. The blade inside his arm twitched once and receded. He didn't know if he was growing weaker or stronger, but he knew he had made a choice, and it hadn't been in order. They brought him to the hollow circle before sunrise, a pit surrounded by statues carved from melted helmets and broken bones, each twisted into screens of stone. The air was thick with incense made from ashroot and dried blood. Lucian stood barefoot on the marked center, his arms bare, chest painted with the spiral of judgment. The elders of Kathir watched from above, silent behind masks of cracked ivory, their eyes dark and unmoving. A warrior stepped forward and poured salt into a line around the arena. A second drew the blade across his own palm and smeared the blood across a stone altar. No weapons were given to Lucian. Only a ritual dagger was placed at his feet, thin, curved, and intentionally dull. One of the elders finally spoke. Face what you are, spare them, or become one of us. The three adversaries stepped from the shadowed gate, each different. The first, a brute with metal spikes driven through his arms, charged with no hesitation. Lucian waited, watched, sidestepped the first strike, and caught the man's neck in a hold. He could have dropped him, could have knocked him cold. Instead, the blood blade ripped free from Lucian's arm before he even summoned it. It drove into the enemy's spine with a scream of tearing meat. The crowd was silent. The elder said nothing. The second adversary circled slower, a woman with red eyes and a hooked weapon. She moved like water, slicing the air with precision. Lucian blocked twice, felt her blade nick his thigh. Instinct took over. He bled. The blade appeared again, not from his arm, but his back, curling over his shoulder like a scorpion's tail. He stabbed forward without aim, pierced her chest. Her eyes widened, and she collapsed. Blood ran in arcs along the salt line. Lucian stood trembling. His body didn't ask. His blood had acted without him. The third adversary stepped out, a smaller figure, hunched, covered in cloth. They ran. No blade. No attack. They just turned and sprinted toward the wall. Lucian gave chase, hand clenched, breath ragged. He closed the distance, raised his hand to strike, but something flickered. A face, not hers. The boy, the drone, the click. He stopped. The figure scaled the wall and disappeared over the edge. He stood alone, panting. From above, the elders remained still. Lucian turned to them, fists clenched. "I didn't ask to be here." His voice cracked with rage. One of the elders stepped forward and spoke, not loud, but clear enough to pierce everything. "But you asked not to feel, and here, that wish is a curse." Lucian's arms twitched. Blood ran without a blade. The weapons formed again, even though he hadn't bled for them. His body pulsed with something raw, unfiltered, uncontrolled. The arena remained silent, but inside him, something else had started screaming. The power was no longer waiting for permission. Lucian walked through the lower veins of Kathir, alone, his breathing shallow, the world around him humming like a heartbeat, too loud to ignore. The sky above had begun to shift into something darker, heavier, a storm not of clouds, but of ash and pressure. The marks on his body had spread far beyond his chest. Veins of dried blood etched patterns across his neck, up to his jawline, some of them pulsing faintly with every step. He didn't know where he was going. There were no orders now, no factions. Only the echo of his choices dragging behind him like a second shadow. The streets were empty here, abandoned ruins wrapped in vines of bone and dust. Then he heard it, a scream, sharp and quick, followed by wet snarling. He ran toward the sound and climbed a collapsed wall to see a courtyard split open, its floor cracked by centuries of fire. In the center, cornered against a broken altar, was the same young creature he had spared. Her leg was torn again, her arms cut, eyes wide with terror. Surrounding her were three beasts, large and skeletal, their rib cages open like cages, their mouths lined with hooks instead of teeth. They moved with the hunger of things that remembered being alive. Lucian froze. His fingers twitched. He could leave. She had spat on him. She had chosen to run. It wasn't his war. He could walk away, and no one would question it. But his feet moved. The blade tore from his forearm before he even thought. He leapt from the ledge and landed hard, bones jarring, arms slicing across the nearest beast. It shrieked, spun, and bit into his shoulder before he drove the blade into its skull. Blood sprayed. The second bounced. He rolled under it, stabbed upward through its ribs, and pulled with everything he had. The blade curved, split, and disintegrated the spine. The last beast rammed into him from the side, slammed him into the stone, claws digging into his ribs. He screamed. The blade failed to respond. He reached with his bare hand, found a loose bone spike on the ground, and jammed it into the beast's throat. It choked, thrashed, then stilled. He pushed it off, blood pouring from multiple wounds. His vision blurred. His breath came in stabs. Then he felt a hand, small, gentle. He looked up. The girl stood before him, shaking, her own wounds open and dripping. She placed her palm on his chest, right over the deepest mark. "Now you feel." The words weren't angry. They weren't thankful. They were just true. As she pulled her hand away, the flesh on his back shifted. Something opened, something cracked. Thin lines extended from his spine, slow and silent, like roots searching for sky. Blood hardened around them, building shape. The sky above darkened further, as if responding to the motion. In the distance, horns echoed, low, hollow, ancient. From the edge of the broken corridor, a massive figure stepped into view, cloaked in ash, eyes like embers buried in iron. Lucian didn't know his name, but he knew the weight that came with him. The ground responded to every step. The final trial had arrived, and Lucian was no longer watching from above. The commander of Ash towered above the shattered courtyard, his body built not from flesh, but from hardened layers of gray and blackened soot, each plate etched with burned-in symbols that pulsed like dying embers. Where his veins should have been, smoke coiled beneath translucent skin. His face was a mask of ruin, eyes sunk in pits, glowing faintly orange, mouth unmoving as he stepped forward with the weight of a god buried in his spine. The air around him grew thick with heat and memory. The girl retreated behind a pillar, clutching her side, but Lucian stood his ground. Blood dripped from his wounds, from his hands, from the cracks along his shoulder blades, where something deeper now stirred. The commander stopped a few steps away and spoke, his voice like coals grinding under boot. "You burned the world from above, thinking fire had no price. But here, fire remembers." Lucian gritted his teeth, fists clenched, blade ready beneath the skin. "I never meant to be here." The commander tilted his head slightly. "None of you do. And yet you arrive. You kill. You name it survival. You bleed only for yourselves." Lucian's chest heaved. "Not anymore." The commander raised one arm, ash swirling around his fingers. "Then let me feel it." The first blow came without warning, a wide swing that cracked stone and sent Lucian flying into a wall. He rolled, spit blood, and lunged forward. The blade tore free mid-leap, slicing across the commander's side. The ash armor split, but no fluid came out, only more smoke. The commander countered with a punch that shattered Lucian's ribs and sent him to the ground. He barely managed to dodge the next stomp, rolled again, and struck upward, burying the blade into the commander's thigh. A flash of memory surged through him. Battles, deaths, an entire village turned to dust. Pain not his own, guilt that did not belong to him. He screamed and pushed harder. The commander roared and threw him back. Lucian slid across the ground, body broken, blood pouring freely. The marks on his back flared. His vision blurred, then cleared, then shifted. The pain became clarity. He stood, legs shaking, and opened his arms. The scars split wide. From his spine burst wings, massive, jagged, made of solidified blood in the shape of blades, glistening crimson in the light of the burning sky. His eyes tore open, pupils gone, replaced by rivers of red. Lances of hardened blood grew from his forearms, curving like thorns. The commander paused. Lucian flew. The impact cracked the courtyard. Blade met ash. Wing met shoulder. Blood rained. Smoke burst. They clashed again and again, Lucian driving his strikes with no thought of victory, only of release. Every hit drew from him more power, more memory, more suffering. He felt them all now, the ones who died by his hand, the ones he ignored, the ones who bled in silence. He absorbed it, carried it, became it. The commander faltered. Lucian slammed into him, drove the blades through his chest, and whispered, "You feel it now. The commander's body cracked. Flames burst from his mouth. He stumbled backward and fell. Ash scattered in every direction. Silence followed. Lucian stood in the crater, wings shaking, body leaking blood from every pore. But he was still standing. He had not killed for survival. He had killed for them. The body of the commander shattered slowly, not in a single blast, but in a long unraveling of form. His chest split open, lines of crimson heat glowing through the cracks like molten metal beneath a failing shell. Ash peeled from his shoulders in strips, drifting upward as if gravity had forgotten him. His limbs collapsed inward, each one breaking into jagged fragments of smoldering charcoal that hissed as they hit the blood-soaked ground. Where his face had been, nothing remained but smoke and a flicker of fading red. When the final ember dissolved, there was no sound, only wind. Lucian stood over the crater, the blood-borne wings still spread from his back, now trembling with weight. His breath came in shallow bursts, sharp and labored. He took one step forward, then another. His legs buckled. He dropped to his knees, stone digging into bone, his arms falling limp to his sides. Blood ran freely from his mouth, from the corners of his eyes, from the cuts lining his ribs like ritual carvings gone too deep. The wings twitched, then sagged. The power that had held them began to fade. He tried to breathe, but the chest no longer obeyed. His lungs moved, but the air stayed outside. In the distance, shadows gathered, inhabitants of Kathir, soldiers, watchers, elders, even the girl he had saved. They said nothing. No one moved. They stood as one, witnessing what few had ever seen. A death with meaning. Lucian raised his head with effort. The sky had opened. The clouds above him swirled like black ink in water, churning slowly, a silent storm that pulsed with memory. He looked up into it, as if searching for something that could not be seen. His arms opened slightly, as if to embrace it. And then they fell. His heart gave a final beat. His body tilted forward, but did not collapse. He remained on his knees, head bowed, wings still half extended, blood flowing down his open palms. Lucian Crane died not as a weapon, not as an operator, but as something Naraka had carved open and made honest. No one cheered, no one wept, but in the silence, everyone felt. The ground pulsed once more, deep and deliberate, a vibration that spread from beneath the city's foundations and climbed through every wall, every pillar, every bone. The sky above Kathir darkened in waves, not from clouds, but from something older and heavier, a pressure folding over itself, preparing to deliver judgment. Lucian's body remained suspended in the crater, knees still bent, arms limp, blood pooled at his feet. Then the wind stopped. The temperature dropped. A shadow spread across the upper terraces, and from it descended a figure cloaked in black, silent and towering, draped in folds of shifting fabric that moved like oil on water. At the center of its hood burned a single eye, white, sharp, unblinking, surrounded by thin glowing cracks that spidered out across the dark surface like veins cut into obsidian. The eye focused downward. The presence landed without sound, yet the earth responded, trembling beneath its weight. The blood around Lucian rose. His body followed. Lifeless, it lifted from the stone, the wings of hardened blood extending wide and slow behind him, their edges sharp and beautiful, their surfaces marked with deep fissures. Shards flaked off his skin, floating upward in spirals. The eye narrowed. The voice came, not spoken, but felt, each word hammering directly into the chest of every living being in Kathir. He felt nothing as the world bled around him. But Naraka does not allow the heart to stay quiet. He felt it all in the end. Let his blood be a mirror for those who still feel nothing. The crowd did not move. No one bowed, no one wept. They only stared. The warriors who once chanted for violence, the elders who watched from behind ritual masks, the scavengers hiding in cracks and ledges, the girl he saved, all stood frozen as Lucian's corpse ascended in silence. The light around him dimmed. The veins that pulsed across his lifeless body grew brighter, stretching toward the sky. The pull had begun. The voice remained motionless, its eye locked on him, as if holding the moment in place. And across the broken city of Kathir, for the first time in generations, the silence was not hollow. It was full. The sky tears itself open above Kathir. A vortex of red light spirals downward like a bleeding eye, its glow painting the stone towers in violent shades. Lucian's body rises slowly, wings dissolving into trails of crystallized blood. He does not breathe. He does not move. The people below say nothing. Then, from within the vortex, the voice descends. Cloaked in shadows, fractured by veins of dim light, with a single glowing eye staring through the silence. It hovers above the city and speaks. Voice felt more than heard. He carried nothing, and so nothing could be taken from him. But Naraka gave him what he feared most. He carried pain. He carried choice. And in doing so, he became more than silence. He became a wound that bled for others. Let that be enough. Lucian's body begins to dissolve in midair, fragmenting into drifting shards of red light. The pull intensifies. He rises into the vortex, piece by piece. The voice watches until the last trace of him vanishes. Then it speaks one final time. He has been pulled to a place not of heaven, nor of hell. A place beyond pain, beyond feeling, beyond return. The null. A rift opens beside the voice, slicing the sky with a sharp vertical tier of white light. Inside, a storm of shifting dimensions swirls in silence. The voice steps through the portal and vanishes into the fracture. The light seals shut behind it. Only then do the people of Kathir begin to breathe again. The war drums are silent. The blades remain sheathed. No orders were given, yet no one moves. A pause spreads through the streets like smoke. For the first time, they feel something and choose not to kill.